families' hopes and dreams heard on Capitol Hill than we've seen in my lifetime. But we can still do better. Fair tax at mail.house.gov, energy independence at mail.house.gov. We will get those ideas heard. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to you for providing me the time this afternoon. I yield back the balance.
Thank the gentleman from Georgia. The chair will receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, a message from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker,
Madam Secretary.
I have been directed by the Senate to inform the House that the Senate has passed H.R. 2192, cited as the National Guard and Reservist Debt Release Extension Act 2011. I'm sorry.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5, 2011, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Bartlett, for 30 minutes.
That's right. Hopefully I'll remember this is only 30 minutes. It's very hard to remember for some reason. For me, anyway.
Mr. Speaker, on the 15th day of March, I'm sorry, the 8th day of March in 1956, a scientist, geologist by the name of M. King Hubbard spoke to an audience in San Antonio, Texas. The audience was a bunch of oil people. He gave what I think is going to be recognized as the most important speech of the last century. It was really a very audacious speech. At that time, the United States was king of oil. We produced more oil, we sold more oil, and we consumed more oil than any nation in the world. And M. King Hubbard told that group of oil geologists and company executives that in just 14 short years, the United States would reach its maximum oil production. That no matter what they did after that, their oil production would decline. This was an incredible speech. Essentially, no one believed it. Because, as I say, at that time, the United States was the king of oil. Producing more, shipping more, consuming more than any other nation in the world. For a number of years, M. King Hubbard was a pariah. Nobody believed him. He was kind of relegated to the lunatic fringe. And then in 1980, 10 years after his prediction that the United States would reach its maximum oil production, you could look back, and what you saw is shown on this chart. And this, of course, goes out beyond that year. But what you see is what happened then. The United States did reach its maximum oil production in 1970. And after that, the production fell off, no matter what we did. Now, there was a little blip on the downside because we found a lot of oil in Alaska. You can see it there on the chart. And we found a lot of oil in the Gulf of Mexico, the yellow that you see there. There was a little blip on the downslope, and M. King Hubbard had not included in his predictions the oil that we would find in Alaska and the Gulf of Mexico. He included only the lower 48. This chart shows where that oil came from. A lot of it came from Texas. It was the biggest single source of oil. The first oil, of course, was found in Pennsylvania, part of the rest of the USA. And then you have natural gas liquids on the top. And as we found and used more and more natural gas, the natural gas liquids increased. That's not gas in your gas tank. That's propane and butane and things like that. This is something that could hardly have been believed. How could a country as creative and innovative as the United States possibly not be able to continue to produce more and more oil when they needed more and more oil? What M. King Hubbert did was a pretty simple thing. Oil had been pumped for long enough, 50 years or so by that time, that they had some idea of what went on in an oil field. And the production in an individual oil field followed kind of a bell-shaped curve. As you pumped the field, you got more and more, and then when you reached the top, it became harder and harder to get the oil out, and so it fell off as you went down the other side of the bell curve. And so what he reasoned was, if I can make some estimate of how many oil fields there will be in the United States, and I add up all those little oil fields, all those little bell curves, I'll get a big bell curve. And that will tell me when we're going to reach our maximum production in the United States. Just about a year later, another speech was given. And I don't know if these two gentlemen knew each other at all. But this other speech was given by the father of our nuclear submarine, Hyman Rickover. And Hyman Rickover spoke to a group of physicians. The audience is irrelevant. He spoke to a group of physicians in St. Paul, Minnesota. And he said some things that should have been self-evident, but obviously they weren't, because nobody else was saying them. Nobody else has said them much since then. What he said in this speech was that in the 8,000-year recorded history of man, the age of oil would be but a blip. And he referred to it as this golden age. Here are a few quotes from that speech. And by the way, you can find it on the internet. If you simply Google for Rickover and energy speech, it will come up. It was lost for a number of years. And a few years ago, it was found and put on the internet. And what he says here seems to be axiomatic. There is nothing man can do to rebuild exhausted fossil fuel reserves. They were created by solar energy, he says, 500 million years ago, and took eons to grow to their present volume. In the face of the basic fact that fossil fuel reserves are finite, they will run out. The exact length of time these reserves will last is important in only one respect. The longer they last, the more time do we have to invent ways of living off renewable or substitute energy sources and to adjust our economy to the vast changes which we can expect from such a shift. Now, this would seem to be, as I said, axiomatic. You know, this obviously the moon isn't made out of green cheese and the earth isn't made out of oil. It is finite. One day it will run out. And so it is obvious that one day one will have to come to grips with this. You will have to find alternative energy sources. Just when is that time for the world? When we ran out of our ability to produce more oil when we wanted more oil was in 1970. But the United States was the first great industrialized nation, and so we would expect that we would reach that point before the rest of the world. Just when would the rest of the world reach that point? Fossil fuels, and I love this statement, fossil fuels resemble capital in the bank. A prudent and responsible parent will use his capital sparingly in order to pass on to his children as much as possible of his inheritance. A selfish and irresponsible parent will squander it in riotous living and not care one whit about how his offspring will fare. I have 10 children and 17 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. Particularly my great-grandchildren, and some of my grandchildren will look back and they will ask themselves, how could they have done it? How could they have gone on feverishly looking for and drilling for oil when it was obvious that it was finite, when it was obvious that there would come a time that we would have to transition from oil to alternative sources of energy? Now, this is a warning from the past, but that wasn't the only warning that we were going to have, because your government has paid for 4 separate studies of this problem. And the phenomenon is called peak oil. That's the time at which you reach your maximum production capability, and after that, no matter what you do, production will fall off. As we saw earlier, that happened in the United States in 1970. By the way, by 1980, it was painfully obvious that M. King Hubbert was right, because looking back those 10 years, gee, we really did peak in 1970, didn't we? And we're tipped over and starting down the other side now. Your government paid for 4 studies. Why 4? Because they didn't like what the first one said, and so they ordered another one, and didn't like what that one said, so a third, and then a 4th. I have quotes here from 2 of those studies. The first of those studies was a study by SAIC, and the primary author of that study was Robert Hirsch, and it's usually referred to as the Hirsch report. It issued in 2005. And these are just a couple of quotes from that. World production of conventional oil will reach a maximum and decline thereafter. That maximum is called the peak. A number of competent forecasters project peaking within a decade. Others contend it will occur later. Prediction of the peaking is very difficult because of geological complexities, measurement problems, pricing variations, demand elasticity, and political influences. Peaking will happen, but the timing is uncertain. The world, they said, has never faced a problem like this. Without massive mitigation more than a decade before the fact, before peaking occurs. The problem will be pervasive and will not be temporary. We had a temporary problem with the Arab oil embargo in the 70s. This will not be temporary. Previous energy transitions, wood to coal and coal to oil, were gradual and evolutionary. Oil peaking will be abrupt and revolutionary, the report said. We were very comfortable living in this golden age, it is referred to by the father of our nuclear submarine, Hyman Rickover. He noted that the incredible amount of energy in oil permitted us to live a very high-quality life as compared to our ancestors who had not yet found how to tap in to the enormous riches of fossil fuels. When I first heard this statistic, I was stunned. I said to myself, it can't be true. 1 barrel of oil, that's 42 gallons. 1 barrel of oil has the energy equivalent of 25,000 man-hours of effort. That's 12 people working all year. A barrel of oil has the energy equivalent of 12 people working all year long. Wow, that seems incredible, doesn't it? And then I thought, I drive a Prius and it takes me about 50 miles on a gallon of gasoline. Not very big. Gallon of gasoline. Now, I could pull my Prius that 50 miles, but it would take me a long time. With the come-alongs and chains and hooking to the guardrail and trees, I could get the Prius that 50 miles. Wow, I said, maybe there are 25,000 man-years of work in 1 barrel of oil. Now, it wasn't very long ago that oil was worth $12 a barrel. That means that you could buy the life-enhancing effects of having a full-time servant work for you all year long, and you could buy it at the wellhead for $1. And if you look around the world and see the quality of life that most of the world's people live, it is really quite incredible compared to the quality of life that our ancestors lived before they found how to tap into the enormous potential of fossil fuels. There was another report which issued in '05, and that was a report by the Corps of Engineers. And here is a quote from that report. In general, all non-renewable resources follow a natural, simple curve. Production increases rapidly, slows, reaches a peak, and then declines at a rapid pace similar to its initial increase. This is the bell curve, the curve that N. King Hubbard had noted that permitted him to make his prediction as to when the United States would reach its maximum oil production. The major question for petroleum is not whether production will peak, but when it will peak. There are many estimates of recoverable petroleum reserves, giving rise to many estimates of when peak oil will occur and how high the peak will be. A careful review of all the estimates leads to the conclusion that world oil production may peak within a few short years, after which it will decline. Your government didn't like what these two studies said, and so there were two more studies ordered, one from the Government Accountability Office and the fourth one from the National Petroleum Council. I do not have quotes from these two, but they say essentially the same thing, that the peaking of oil is inevitable with potentially catastrophic consequences. Since your government didn't want to hear what these reports said, it didn't pay any attention to what the report said, and we have gone on with policies of drill, baby, drill. Just recently, there have been two more reports that tell us where we are. They also look at where we have been, and they make their prediction of where we are going. The first of these reports is the one on top, and that they issued in '08. And the people who issued it were the IEA, the International Energy Association. They are a creature of the OECD, a consortium of major industrial countries. There is a similar organization, the Energy Information Administration, which is a part of our Department of Energy. And they do similar things and have published similar curves. But this is the IEA, the International Energy Agency. The blue part of the chart here represents conventional oil. Now, if they had a long enough chart, it would go back here about 100 or more years. And we started pumping way back here when we didn't need much, and so we didn't pump much. And every time we needed more oil, we could find more oil, we could pump more oil. And we've been doing that now for right at 150 years. And so here we are now. And what they show in this chart, that total liquid fuels, that's the line up here, has been plateaued. You can see it's flat there at 84 million barrels a day. We've been stuck there for 5 years now. We're in a recession worldwide. We aren't using as much oil as we might use. And still oil hovers near $100 a barrel. A couple, 3 years ago, when the world's economy, including ours, kind of had a momentary collapse, oil prices dropped down to $40 a barrel. But the reality of the supply compared to the demand, the prices steadily rose until oil is right at $100 a barrel now. What this chart showed was a fairly significant drop-off in the production of oil from our conventional oil fields. This is following the same curve, you know, that was followed by the United States after 1970. So our 1970 plateau is the world's plateau that occurred, what, in about, 05 to 09, something like that, was roughly when their curve occurred. The chart here has several other contributions to our liquid fuels. The top one here is natural gas liquids, and you saw that in the previous chart. That's propane and butane and liquids like that. The green one under it is non-conventional oil. That is growing, and that will grow. That's oil from places like the oil sands of Alberta, Canada, where they have a lift there that shovel that could lift 100 tons at a time. It dumps it into a truck that hauls 400 tons, and then they haul it to a big cooker, and they heat it up so that the oil will flow. It won't flow otherwise. They have a large amount of what we call stranded natural gas. Stranded natural gas is natural gas that is where you don't have very many people, and since it can't be moved, it's not a liquid, it's a gas, and it's difficult to move long distances, and so it's cheaper when it's stranded, and so they're using this stranded natural gas as an energy source to warm this oil up so that it will flow. The next little wedge there, a dark red wedge, really is a part of the dark blue one down here. It's enhanced oil recovery. It's the additional oil we get by pumping live steam down there, or pumping seawater down there, or pushing CO2 down there to push it out. Enhanced oil recovery, that is growing, that will grow because we're finding more ways of doing that. Then they show two wedges to keep this production line going up because they think it should go up, and so we'll just find some oil so that it will go up. The light blue here is oil from the fields that we've found but are too difficult to develop, like a field in the Gulf of Mexico that is under 7,000 feet of water and 30,000 feet of rock. It's way down there. As the price of oil goes up, why more and more of these fields will be feasibly, economically developed. The bright red wedge there is a wedge of fields yet to be discovered, because they predict that we cannot get enough oil from the fields that we have discovered, but are too difficult to develop now, so we'll need to find some new fields. Notice that by 2030 they have predicted that we would rise from our current 84 million barrels of oil a day to about 106 million barrels of oil a day. Now, this same organization, the IEA, issued another chart 2 years later in 10. And this chart is pretty different. It shows, of course, the same plateau. Actually, they show a little dip here. Is it starting down, or is that simply an undulation at the plateau? They have reversed the top two contributions and given them different colors, but they have the same thing. This is natural gas liquids, the purple one, and the yellow one is non-conventional oil production. Notice that they don't show the little wedge here for enhanced oil recovery. They have included it where it ought to be, simply as a part of the production from the current oil fields. And notice they go out to 35 rather than 30 in this chart. They go out 5 years further. And they show a really precipitous reduction in the amount of oil that we're going to get from the fields that we're presently pumping. And so to keep this curve going up, because it must go up if the world is going to have any opportunity for a growing economy, to keep the curve going up, they are predicting two huge wedges that will come from the fields that we have now discovered but too difficult to develop, and fields yet to be discovered. There is little confidence that these prognostications will occur. The United States could not do this. We are the most creative, innovative society in the world. And we could not reverse the decline of oil production in our country. And most of those who are serious students in this area do not believe that these two wedges will occur. So it is very probable that what the world is going to do is what the United States has done, and that is that it will tip over and there will be ever less and less oil, harder and harder to get, and more expensive. The next chart kind of puts this in a global perspective. This is a chart which shows what the size of the countries of the world would look like if their size was relevant to the amount of oil reserves that they have. And you notice here that Saudi Arabia dominates the world. That's because Saudi Arabia may, we aren't really sure because they won't open their books, Saudi Arabia may have 22% of all the reserves in the world. You may remember, 6 weeks or a couple of months ago, there was a WikiLeaks expose that said that maybe the Saudis had overestimated their oil reserves by as much as 40%. So the map might not look quite like this, but relatively like this. You know, why would they overestimate their reserves? When OPEC could produce more oil than they were producing, and they were all anxious for more revenues, OPEC decided that they would limit their production so as to keep the price of oil up. And so they permitted each of the countries to pump a percentage of their reserves. And so if you look back at the history of this, you will see that without finding any new fields, their reserves could go up 50%. Sometimes their reserves doubled. It was kind of a contest amongst liars, because the more you said you had, the more you could pump, because you could pump a percentage of what your reserves were. So we really aren't sure what these reserves are because they will not open their books. But it's roughly like this. Certainly, the largest reserves of oil in all the world are in Saudi Arabia. Look at those countries around them. Iran and Iraq and Kuwait. Little Kuwait. It looks like a province down there in the corner of Iraq, and look how much oil they have. The United Arab Emirates, you can hardly find them on a map. Now I want you to look for the countries on the map that have the largest economic activity, and that's the United States. We represent a fourth of all the economic activity in the world. We're one person out of 22, and we have a fourth of all the good things in the world. It's really interesting to ask yourself, how come? What is so different about the United States that this one person out of 22 has a fourth of all the good things in the world? Subject for another time, and we will come and talk about that. But it's an interesting challenge. Why? Why? Look at the United States here. We have only 2% of the reserves of oil in the world. And we use 25% of the oil in the world. Now look at Europe. It's hard to find them on this map, isn't it? Europe collectively is economically a bit bigger than the United States. And they're even worse shape than we are as far as having oil reserves. They are almost totally dependent on oil which is shipped in. And now look to find the two countries that have between them better than 2.5 billion people out of our 7 billion people in the world. China and India. See them over here? Tiny, tiny. They have very small reserves of oil. Last year, the Chinese bought 13 million cars. We struggled to sell 12 million cars. China is now the world's largest polluter. They just passed us. We're number 2 in that in that category. China's economy is growing very rapidly. Their demands for oil are increasing rapidly. I do not have the chart here, but China is buying up oil all over the world. And I asked the State Department, why would China buy oil? We have only 2%, we use 25%, we're not buying oil anywhere. I said, why would China buy oil? You see, you get your oil today by going to the global oil auction, and if you have the money, it's dollars today, let's hope it stays that. If it turns to yen or euros or something else, we're going to be in a heap of trouble. And if you have the money, you get the oil, so you're not benefited at all by owning oil today. The State Department's answer was, I'm not sure China understands the marketplace. Wow. A country at that time growing at 14%, I think China understands the marketplace. I think they understand that there is such a thing as peak oil. Well, do they understand that? 5 years ago, I led a Codel to China this holiday season. I was in Shanghai on New Year's Eve. 9 of us went to talk about energy. China began their discussion of energy by talking about post-oil. Of course there will be a post-oil world. It's not today. We're not running out of oil. For those who say we're running out of oil, that's not what we're running out of. There is a lot of oil left. There's more oil left than all the oil we have used in all of world's history up to now. What we're running out of is our ability to produce that oil at increasing rates to meet increasing demands. We're not running out. There'll be oil for another 150 years, ever less and less, more and more expensive, harder and harder to get. Our time is running out. If you had only one chart to look at, this would be the chart. This is when we discovered oil. It's way back there. Huge amounts of oil. This dark, heavy line here is our consumption of oil. You need to kind of thank the Arabs for their Arab oil embargo. If they hadn't had that in the 70s, look where this curve would be. It would have gone off the top of the chart. That woke us up. Your air conditioner now is probably 3 times as efficient as your air conditioner was then. Well, we will return to talk about what can we do about this. Today we've talked only about the problem. It's a huge problem. We're equal to that problem. We'll be back and talk about how we respond to the problem. Thank you, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gohmert from Texas, for 30 minutes. What? No.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're in a time of massive overspending, a time when some want to raise taxes, creating more of an economic problem. But it's been shocking that after the biggest wave election since the 1930s, 80-plus brand new Republican conservative members coming into this House, it's been nearly a year, and we really haven't cut much of anything. There's plenty of places to do it. It should be done. It can be done. We ought to just say we're going back to the last Speaker Pelosi budget before the big bailouts and stimulus all started occurring. I don't remember governmental entities around the country, federal governmental entities in 2007 and 2008 with Speaker Pelosi at the helm of things, complaining that they weren't getting enough federal money. Yet if we went back there and just said, you know what, forget the stimuluses and the bailouts, obviously those haven't worked. Let's just go back to the 07 or even the 08 budget. Or not, they didn't pass a budget, they passed appropriations. But let's go back to those numbers. Instantly, $1 trillion trimmed off. What we've had is a President of the United States coming into office jumping up the federal spending by $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion, and then saying we're not cutting any of that extra $1 trillion we've added on. We just need now to raise taxes to get up to all this giveaway spending that we've done. There are many good examples of that, but none better than in the solar energy area. A place like Solyndra getting between $500 and $600 million that's been completely wasted. We've been told by Secretary Napolitano that the country just can't afford to build a fence on our southern border where our problems now are not Latin American citizens coming up here. We have what are sometimes labeled OTMs other than Mexicans coming in, and many of them are coming in and they're not coming in to do us any favors, and they're not coming here to get jobs. We have an obligation to provide for the common defense. Our oath requires us to do that, and we're not doing it. But good grief, if you took the money that this administration squandered giving away to Solyndra, take the $700 billion or so that was squandered given away to a solar plant in Nevada, actually they had about $35 billion to give away. They literally have been doing. And according to the information from this administration, if you some of us think it shouldn't cost nearly this much, but if you took just $1 to $2 billion of that 35 that have been squandered by this energy department and said we're committed to providing for the common defense, and in providing for the common defense we're going to build defense, it would cost a fraction of what this administration has squandered on solar energy giveaway programs. What a waste. Then we have Obamacare. You want to save $1 trillion? Just stop it. Repeal Obamacare. The vast majority of American people sent a new majority into the House to try to get that done. Turns out we got to have help in the Senate we don't have down there, so that we can do the will of the majority of the American public and repeal Obamacare. There's $1 trillion in savings, actually more than that. We got $105 billion being spent right now, in the process of being spent, to make sure that the mechanisms are in place so that by 2013, 2014, Obamacare is going to be the law of the land, whether the Supreme Court strikes it down or not, because all these mechanisms will be in place. It's time to repeal it. It's time to get rid of it and have serious health care reform. And you can't have serious health care reform until you know what the cost of health care is. You can't go into any doctor's office or any hospital, any health care provider office, and say, how much does it cost for this procedure, that procedure, if it is something that's covered by insurance or Medicare or Medicaid, because they can't tell you. It depends, they'll tell you. What kind of insurance you got? Are you on Medicare, Medicaid? Are you paying cash? Ironically, in a society where paying cash should normally get you the lesser price in health care because of some of the insurance agreements, they are not allowed contractually to charge as little to the cash-paying people as those who have insurance get charged to their insurance companies. Well, that's not free market. That's not competition. So that's something that has to be dealt with. We need transparency there. And when we look at the figures on health care, for example, in Medicare for the calendar year of 2010, it's been estimated that $522.8 billion was spent on Medicare. When you divide the number of households in the United States that have been estimated to have one or more people on Medicare, you find out we're apparently spending between $20,000 and $30,000 a household for Medicare. You can buy some really great private health insurance, especially if you have a high deductible, for a lot less than $20,000 a year. And that's why the proposal I had that our some call it bipartisan. It's clearly become a partisan entity. They, after being called to the woodshed by this current president, they were able to strike about $200 or $300 billion from their estimated cost of Obamacare, only to find once it passed that got put back in. Well, if CBO has a margin of error of $300 billion out of every one trillion they estimate, then probably it's not something we ought to keep. Kind of like the Energy Department. When they're that bad at what they do, it's time to get rid of them and do something new. But you can't blame the folks that are there. Their hands were tied with rules that were put in place in 1974 by, until the last 5 or 6 years, the most liberal Congress in our history, same one that said we weren't going to stay with our commitments to allies in Southeast Asia. We left, some estimate, 2 million people to be killed when we fled Southeast Asia. And now this president seems to be following the same trends that we saw with President Jimmy Carter, turning on our allies, hurting our friends, helping our enemies, and there's always a price to be paid for that. So we got Obamacare put in place. Over $1 trillion could be saved. Just repeal the thing. And let's start with a real reform. And it certainly appears, even though CBO refused to score it, Newt Gingrich had told me if I could get that bill scored, it might revolutionize the discussion on health care. So naturally, CBO wouldn't score something like that, even after they were requested by the ranking Republican on Energy and Commerce, the Committee of Jurisdiction, and the ranking Republican on the Joint Tax Commission. They both requested to be scored. They didn't score it. It might have interfered with Obamacare being passed. And the bottom line was it would have given seniors a choice. Do you want to keep being on Medicare and having the federal government tell you what you can or can't have, and having to go out and, when the precious few dollars you have from Social Security, have to pay AARP or somebody else's Medigap insurance, wraparound insurance, supplemental insurance? Do you want to have to keep paying precious dollars? Or would you like the alternative of having the federal government buy you basically the best private insurance you could have with a high deductible, $3,500, $5,000, whatever we want to say, whatever ends up being most cost effective, and we will give you cash in a health savings account you control with your own debit card. You make the decisions. The only restriction is it has to be for health care. You can't use that money for anything else. And give people a choice. Let them decide if they want to quit buying Medigap insurance. And I know, as wonderful as AARP is, that it would cut, I think 2 years ago they cleared over $400 million in clear profit from their supplemental Medicare insurance. So, you know, you hate to cut in on a charitable institution like AARP's massive profits like that off people that can't afford to buy the product, but gee, let's give seniors a choice. But in order, and then, of course, we would need to give incentives to young people. Put your own money into health care, a health savings account, but your money, but it can only be used for health care. You can't pull it out for something that's not health care. You can gift it to other people's health savings account. When you pass away, if you got money in there, you could pass that on, have someone inherit that from you into their HSA. But once it's committed as health savings account money, it has to be spent on health care. But we've been told if that happens, then the vast majority of young people in their 20s and 30s would have so much, massive amounts of money built up by the time they'd be eligible for Medicare. Not only would they not want Medicare, they wouldn't need it. They'd have plenty of money to do what they wished. Now that would get us off this road to the dustbin of history, because we have bankrupted ourselves on entitlement programs. And at the same time, what an incredible deal. You get better health care. You get more control. You put patients back in control. You put patients and doctors back making the decisions. And I am a big supporter of health insurance. But the trouble is, for a number of years now, we haven't had health insurance in America. We've had health management. And I'm very concerned that unless health insurance companies get back in the business of health insurance instead of health management, then there'll be some bill that ends up running them out of business, and it, of course, will be Obamacare if it's not repealed. And then it'll be the government controlling things. A massive takeover. As I've said before, Obamacare, kind of like the cap and trade bill, they're all about the same thing. It's all about the GRE. The government running everything. That's what it's about. We could save money, return freedom to people who have not had it in the area of health care. They would control their destiny. But there are some people here in Washington that genuinely, honestly believe they need to be making the personal decisions for people across America, because, gee, they're smarter. They would make better personal decisions for people that haven't done so well on their own. Things like that caused the original, thinking like that caused the original revolution. They didn't want some king who thought he knew more about what they should do with their lives, making the decisions about their personal lives. And some have drawn the parallel that there is a correlation between the American Revolution and the French Revolution when compared to the Tea Party movement and the Occupy Wall Street movements. Because the American Revolution was about one thing. It was about liberty. And there were people who signed and pledged their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor, and they were all at stake. And many who signed pledging their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor, lost their lives and their fortunes. But their sacred honor was intact when they died. The Declaration of Independence said we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Nobody's guaranteed happiness. But the founders knew that we were endowed by our Creator with these rights. But like any endowment, any inheritance that's passed on from a loving Father, if you're not willing to fight for it to the death if necessary, you will not keep your inheritance. If you make stupid decisions with your endowment, with your inheritance, you're going to lose it. You won't keep it. Many countries have suspected they were endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights, but they didn't fight to preserve them. They never fought to grasp them to begin with, and they've never had them. Some have had them and squandered them. We have been given such a gift by our Creator, and by those who were willing to defend our inheritance so that we could enjoy that incredible endowment. Of course, we find out that there are some people in the Occupy movement who have big trust funds, massive amounts of money to keep them going, and they're out there complaining about people with money, got their laptops or their iPads, don't appear to be hurting too much. It appears some of them were born on third base and have gone through life thinking they hit a triple. Well, they haven't. And they need to be grateful for the people that got them to third base, but they're not. We can get spending under control, but we've got to get back to a moral nation. As the founders said, this government was never intended to work as a government for immoral people, for a people who did not grasp and understand the gift from their Creator, and that they had a Creator. We know that there are those who in this country are atheists because they have the freedom to do that, and that's fine. They have the freedom of religion. But the late Bob Murphy from Nacogdoches, Texas used to say, you know, I feel sorry for atheists. He said, I do. I feel sorry for atheists because they have to tell the world, while they're trying to act like intellectuals, they have to tell the world that they believe the equation nobody plus nothing equals everything. As Bob used to say, how embarrassing, you know, to act like an intellectual and say, I believe the equation nobody plus nothing equals everything. Because the truth is, we were endowed by our Creator. It didn't just happen. These incredible gifts didn't just appear. We're endowed by a loving Creator. I learned a lot about the nature of God as a father who loved his children. I learned even more about the nature of God as a judge and chief justice. How you don't want to punish people. You got a taste of that as a father. But there have to be laws. There has to be enforcement. There has to be equal enforcement. And people not be above the law. Well, when you get people in positions of authority who think they're above the law, that they should be in a position, as was King George III, to decide legislative, judicial, and executive decisions, we're in trouble. In North Dakota, there has been the largest oil find since the discoveries in Alaska. Some think the shale finds of oil in North Dakota may even exceed Prudhoe Bay. It's big. We, those of us who believe in God, should be thanking God for the endowment of all the natural resources in this country. We have been richly blessed, and yet we've got an administration that says, hands off. This might make us energy independent. This might move us down the road to stop sending money to countries that hate us, to stop sending money to countries who are funneling money to terrorism. This energy resource blessing that we've been given, if we used it, would create jobs, but we're not going to allow it because we want to use something they call alternative energy. The reason, as someone recently said, it's called alternative energy is because it isn't real energy. You use more energy getting the energy out than you actually get back. That's been seen with wind energy. And we know that these massive windmills, though producing some small amount of electricity, they've chopped up a lot of birds in the process. And yet, what has been this administration's position in response to the biggest oil find in modern history in North Dakota? Slauson Exploration Company of Wichita, Kansas was charged under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act for killing 12 birds that, these aren't endangered species, they're migratory birds, like mallard ducks, after allegedly landing in oil waste pits in western North Dakota. So our Justice Department, which abandoned prosecution of funding of terrorism around the world against the United States and our friend Israel, it has abandoned that responsibility. They're purging their training records of any reference to radical Islam. They're refusing to go after the people that want to bring down this country. They're appointing people on Homeland Security Advisory Council who have glowingly talked about Ayatollah Khomeini or the Holy Land Foundation that funneled money to terrorism. They're putting people like that on the Homeland Security Advisory Council, giving them secret clearance and letting them peruse our classified documents. That's what this administration has been doing. But these energy resources could make us energy independent, and what are they doing? They're putting their foot on the throat of anybody that tries to produce them, to the point that they will ignore the tens of thousands of birds that have been killed by windmills and go after the biggest oil find in modern history in America and charge them criminally because maybe there were 12 ducks that got into some of their oil. It's incredible what this administration is doing. They think to help America, but clearly, just as clearly in retrospect as President Carter hurt this country, hurt those who love liberty by recognizing the Ayatollah Khomeini as a man of peace, proudly proclaiming his coming back to Iran, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people have died because such a man was encouraged to come to power. Just like this administration did in Egypt, like this administration has done in Libya without really knowing who we were helping, and now the Muslim Brotherhood that is devout in pursuing an international caliphate that would put the lovers of liberty in this country under the shackles of following Sharia law. It's a disgrace. There is so much damage that this administration has been doing. The Justice Department going after people because they believe there is a God. I'll just close with what Ben Franklin said in the Constitutional Convention, 1787, toward the end of June. He said, "How has it happened that we have not once thought of humbly applying to the Father of lights to illuminate our understanding? In the beginning contest with Great Britain, when we were sensible of danger, we had daily prayer in this room. Our prayers, sir, were heard and they were graciously answered." He ultimately said, "If a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it possible an empire could rise without his aid? We've been assured, sir, in the sacred writing, that unless the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it." Firmly believe this, Franklin said. He also said, "I firmly believe without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in our political building no better than the builders of Babel." He was right. We've had over 200 years of blessings as a result. It's time to acknowledge the result of our blessing and the source of our blessings. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what reason does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Was moved to that we do now hereby adjourn.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until noon on Monday, next for the morning hour debate.
The House is gavelled out, but earlier today, members passed the second of 3 anti-regulation bills before leaving for the weekend. The legislation requires federal agencies to take a